So Phil, let's roll right into your segment here. So you just got back from Haiti, right?
I did. I just got back from Haiti. I took 16 people down there, and most of them were teenagers still in high school, and just kind of see, a different part of the world, especially kind of in what you call the third world, and it's how it opened their eyes is definitely something that you look at and you say, like, everyone should go and do it. Like, everyone should see, how other people live.
I think about that probably at least like once a week, about how much privilege, especially we all come from a really wealthy community. Not to say that everyone in this community is wealthy, of course, but we do come from a location where not only are we privileged, but we sort of are sheltered by our privilege in this community. There's a privilege bubble around us that like does sort of makes it really easy to forget that you don't even have to go all the way to Haiti sometimes to see that. Like just even when I'm in Toronto, sometimes I remember that. Oh right, here there's people sleeping on the streets.
Yeah.
And like I can't imagine.
In southwestern Ontario, it's not to take away, but yeah, I think the essential point here is, for one of the essential points is that opening yourself up to the idea that all around you there are people living in different ways.
Well, and like going there must have like. I'm sure you see more of it, or like more of just how much people need a hand just in everyday life, not just...
Yeah, but you also see like how impressive people are. Because you, like at one point, Cape Haitian, which was where we were staying, it's like in a valley and there's hills all around it. So we, one day we just decided like, hey, let's climb this hill. It's like half hill, half mountain. And we're climbing up, and you see someone who like, probably hasn't eaten in a while, and we're like sweating buckets, walking up the hill, like we're like huffing and puffing, and there's this person who like has this like 5-gallon pail of water on her head. She weighs like 90 pounds, and she's just like walking up the hill like she does every day, and you're just like, you are incredibly impressive. Like I hate you right now because I feel like I'm about to die climbing this hill, but these people, they're just going and they're living their lives and they're doing incredibly impressive things every day. That is just their everyday thing. Like just what they have to do to survive. And you look at them and the amount of joy they have and the amount of community that they've built there is something that I think people in this area can really learn from. Because you have people there, and they're really scraping what they can to survive. And yet, they always have times for the neighbors, and they're always laughing and talking with everybody, and it's the sense of community that they have. You think with so little they'd be very protective, but because everyone has so little, they're big on sharing. They're big on making sure everyone has enough.
That's actually the most remarkable thing I've heard from most like war journalists that go to the Middle East is that they say like the sense of community among the people who live, like the native, like the people who actually live in that war-torn part of the world are like, come, you have to stay for dinner.
Yeah. Like
you are part of this community, and like the communal spirit I think almost grows from that almost. We almost, I think once you have all this pampering and comfort, you do feel like, oh, I don't need to go out and seek any like communal spirit here in town because I'm already comfortable. I don't need anyone's help. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't think we only have that because we need it to survive when we're hungry. We have it because it's a necessity to our soul, just in general, or soul, or whatever you'd like to call it. But like, I think people really need that. And that's, hopefully something that a lot of us do, even just being here at PIC and what you do just in general is about building community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you have a few more things here that I wanted to touch on. The odd jobs?
Yeah, so what I'm all about is kind of having these new experiences. And being an entrepreneur, you're always looking at like, okay, where does the next thing come from? And I grew up on a farm. So I grew up on a dairy farm, which is big because you're learning like animal husbandry and cleaning and like food management, and you're kind of doing it all. And then in high school, like I worked at a radio station, I worked at a funeral home. In university, I did voiceover for video games. I was a tour guide. I milked cows at a farm outside Ottawa. you know, I worked as an event planner. I did all sorts of things. And every step along the way, you learn something that you're like, oh, like, that's interesting for that job. And you think you're never going to need it again. Until you're starting something over here and you say, oh, but like, I remember when we did this in this job. So I kind of want to open up and say, like, what is the weirdest job you guys have had? And what is like something that you learned at it that you didn't maybe think much of it at the time, but now you're just like, oh, but like I learned how to do this, and this has really helped me along the way.
All right, well, I can go first.
Yeah.
When I was first out of college, I had a job doing video editing for an e-learning company.
Yeah.
And we would take courses from companies and whoever would hire us, and we would put the voices to them, and then we would do some animation, we'd do a bunch of things to try and bring their course material to life.
Which I can only imagine was super exciting and you loved doing.
Oh yeah, it was. But what I really didn't realize was taking that dry, boring information and figuring out how to translate it, through an audible or a visual medium. You really start to, pick things out. So it's like you really need to, the people who do the best jobs are the ones who care about the smallest details.
Yeah.
And like teaching courses for companies that have very high standards, you really start to realize that they really care about the minute details, and that's actually the most important part.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see how everyone doing those really small details pulls the whole thing together.
Yeah. So I imagine now when you're like designing websites and doing all that stuff, like the little things like you're focused on because like that's the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's if I'm making something that somebody's going to use on their cell phone, the small detail that it may seem insignificant, but you have to make sure that they can access, say the navigation.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to take them. That's what's going to create their experience. So that one minute detail has to be perfect.
Yeah. Dylan, what about you?
Well, there's a couple, but I think I'm gonna go with the short and sweet one that I remember. It's more of like a parable than anything. I worked at Sick Kids Hospital, just at the Starbucks. I didn't work at Sick Kids Hospital. I worked in Sick Kids Hospital. That's an important distinction, I suppose. But every day we would have a line through the queue all the way back, and it was always just a stressful job. There's never a moment where they're stopping people coming up to the counter. And there's one lady that I always found so frustrating. She just seemed so angry all the time, and it's hard to remember that you're in a Sick Kids Hospital sometimes. So the one day they were handing out free Toronto Stars in the building to anyone who wanted one, because it was the Sick Kids edition. So there's a whole section on sick kids, and at the very front there was a story. Like the very front page of that was a story about a girl who just gotten a heart transplant. Like a very dangerous heart transplant, and was recovering from it now and was doing really well. And that lady came in that day with the biggest smile on her face. And like I remember just being like, hey, how's it going? Like, because I hated her up to that point. And I try not to use the word hate, but I just want to highlight how much I would go home after seeing her that day, and it would rule my day. How rude she was being. But then she told me, that's my daughter, on the front page of the Toronto Star. She just got her heart transplant. She's recovering. She's doing so well. And from that moment on, every time I saw her, it was like seeing a friend I'd had my entire life. Yeah. It was just, I was so happy to see her, and it completely reframed the way I talk to people when I'm at work. Like because you don't know what someone's gone through that day.
Absolutely.
Right. So anyway, that's mine.
I had so much time to think. I had the good fortune for a little bit of time, just as it was about to become obsolete, working with film at a second-run movie theater, and that, like putting together 35mm film and just carrying around canisters of film was great for the shoulders. But that was the first time I had a job where it was like, and it was just a student job, but it was a job where you'll be assembling a bunch of film over on a platter. You'll be projecting a movie. You'll be maybe doing some third thing. And your mind is really fractured, but you train yourself to be listening to the movie, and you can hear movie splices happen. And you can hear if the movie warbles, and like, it's also the kind of job where these days you don't think about it as being dangerous, and the film is no longer super flammable, but there's still a ridiculously high wattage bulb this big ventilation system, and if you don't turn that ventilation system on, which a fellow projectionist did once, if you fail to turn the projection or the vent on and you turn the bulb on, you have about 8 minutes before that bulb overheats and explodes, and then you have to evacuate the building. The worst thing you can do is shatter the bulb and then turn the ventilation on, because then you've sent tiny shards of glass through the ventilation system in the building.
Yeah.
Never did that. Cool job. Glad I did it, because as soon as I think my second year or third year of school, The Phantom Menace came out, and that came out on DVD straight to theater. So bye-bye projection.
Now, I'm going to bite off a couple more minutes just because I want to make sure that we talk about some. There was a couple other things we wanted to talk about before we move on. So tell us what your escape rooms look like.
Yeah, so escape rooms, I like everyone else, hadn't heard of this until like 2 or 3 years ago. And somebody took me to one.
2 or 3 months ago for me.
Yeah, so somebody took me to one, and I was like, well, this is fantastic. And I do a lot of youth programming for Chalmers Community Church, and I said, this is like an ideal communications exercise. So what I did is I said, I'm good with puzzles, so I'll make them, and then I'll lock the teenagers in the rooms with their parents, and then we'll just watch to see what happens. And we saw some families worked really well together. I saw one family, they were like in the middle of something, they were arguing about what to do, and their teenage son just like laid down on the floor, just like face down, just lay down on the floor, and we're like, well, that's interesting. Like, we know how conflict works in your house. Like, you just remove yourself from it, you shut down. So then we started talking about like, hey, how can we take the lessons we learned about each other in this escape room in like a very low stress like environment. Like, the stress is high, but like low consequence environment. And how can we apply that to when you're arguing about, curfews, or, can you go to the dance on Friday night or something like that. And people really enjoyed those. So I needed to do a fundraiser a couple months later, so I did this, and it went really well. And then my friend Rob Fawcett, who is an outstanding human being.
Go check out our channel. There's a video with Rob on the channel.
Yeah,
Actually, I'm already here, so just keep watching.
Yeah, he was asked to do a fundraiser in Port Elgin, and he heard about what I did. So we partnered together, and we put on these 5 escape rooms in 5 different bars in Port Elgin. And it was just this smash success.
It was super well attended, right?
That's the one that we did. It was really fun.
Super well attended. Big thank you to all the restaurants that participated in that. And it raised a ton of money for West for Youth, which does a great work for the mental health of the youth of our community. So we're happy to do that. But ever since then, I've been getting these calls. Wyerton just opened an escape room, and they asked me to design one of their rooms. There was this convention down at Wilfrid Laurier a couple weeks ago, and they asked me to do an escape room for them. And more people are just finding that like there's this great opportunity to be challenged. And I think today, challenge got a bad rap. But like, I look at like tying your shoes. You tie your shoes every day, and you're like, oh, whatever. But like, remember the first time you tied your shoes? You're like, yes, I've done it. Like, I've worked so hard at learning how to do this, and I've overcome that challenge.
Yeah.
And people like, they love that.
No.
So, and this is just an opportunity where, everybody can have that challenge. Like, most of the people in this room, we may be a little past our athletic prime. Like, we're not coming home with Super Bowl trophies anymore.
What?
Yeah, like we're not doing that. So like, now it's like, okay, how can
anymore? Hold on.
Yeah, where are those?
I can't even think come up with jokes.
Where are the challenges that we can overcome? And like working as teams is really important. So I've been running these escape rooms just for fun in some cases. I have done a few businesses as well, coming to do like some training. That's my educational background. I went to school for communications or organizational, how communications or how businesses communicate within themselves. So that was my educational background, and this is just a great opportunity to talk about like, hey, what are your office dynamics like, without being super confrontational and be like, well, you do this and you do this. You can say, hey, like when you were struggling with the maze over there, like how were you being supportive and like what could have been better? And then people naturally put that together. It's like, oh yeah, like I can get more out of my employees by doing this.
That's great. Okay, now I'm gonna wrap up. But is there any way that people can get a hold of you if they want to get you to come out and set up one of these for them?
Yes, absolutely. Find me on Facebook is probably the easiest. Just at Phiilp Craig. I also
An
have
elaborate system of dummy pages.
no, something like that. Also, custom escape rooms. If you search that on Facebook, I also pop up there. Yeah, just if you have any questions, please call me because I'm an escape room enthusiast. Like I love seeing people succeed. Watching people do escape rooms is more fun than me actually doing them. Because
you were so much. I was having as much fun. Just doing the escape room, and equally as much fun watching you watch us go through the escape room and figure out what was working and what wasn't. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you.
Thank you.
And who's got the next topic?